Friends, today we are looking at the origin of racial discrimination and segregation in USA. In where?
Yes.
USA. But before we continue, I emphasize one Kasoma Farouk of Uganda's idea. No one is coming in your life. No one is coming in your life. The government is busy. Your clan is busy. Even your friends are busy. So it's upon you to liberate yourself. So we are saying, we are looking at the origin of racial minority problems in USA. We are saying today, the problem of racism was the heart of North American slavery, colonization, segregation, and empire building activities of Western Europe, especially in the 18th century. So we are challenging minds today. What were the origins of racial minority problems in USA? We are saying colonialism and displacement of the native people. We are saying today colonialism and the displacement of the native people led to wide displacement. For example, between 1492 and 1800, the colonialists grabbed the land, imposed the control. For example, during the Trail of Tears, over 60,000 members of group of Indian nations were displaced. Were what? Displaced. So we are saying colonialism and displacement of the native people was the origin of racial minority problems in USA, where we believe at one time, during the Trail of Tears, over 60,000 members of a group of Indian nations were displaced. Were what? Displaced from their homeland in southeastern United States of America to Indian territory west of Mississippi River, present-day Oklahoma. So we are saying today, the Indians were displaced from their homelands and were taken in, for example, to the Indian territory west of Mississippi River is present-day Oklahoma. They were displaced. They were what? Displaced. So we are saying today, colonialism and displacement of the native people was the origin of racial minority problems in USA, where the Indians were the minority, were displaced, and this was the origin of the racial minority problems in where? In USA. Another one, immigration and xenophobia, where we believe by this time discrimination against immigrants. For example, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which was signed on 6 May 1882 by President Chester, prohibited the immigration of Chinese laborers, skilled, even the non-skilled. Whereby this time we are saying immigration and xenophobia. What was xenophobia by this time? We believe that the Chinese laborers, skilled and unskilled, were not allowed to come in America for 10 years. So we are saying today, this was the origin of racial minority problems in USA, where the Chinese were limited from entering a country called America. The skilled, even the non-skilled. This was the origin of racial minority problems in USA, where we believe by this time that the minority were discriminated against. For example, the Chinese were not allowed to come and work in USA. So this was the origin of racial minority problems in USA. Another one, enslavement and transatlantic slave trade, where it forced the transportation of millions of enslaved Africans across Atlantic to America for forced labor. For forced what? Labor. Where we believe by this time, for example, in the 1896 Super Court Policy vs. Ferguson upheld the racial segregation laws. Where we believe by this time, racial segregation laws were allowed by this time, where the whites were supposed to be above the what? The Black Sea. And by this time we are saying the enslavement and the transatlantic slave trade was the origin of racial minority problems in USA, where the blacks were transported to come and work in America as slaves. As what? As slaves. And this was the origin of the racial minority problems in USA. Another one, systematic racism and inequality, which puts black people at a disadvantage within the society. For example, in education, housing, you find that the whites are having great houses. The whites attain great what? Education. And by this time, this is the origin of racial minority problems in USA, where we believe by this time it is systematic racism that the whites in education, they are higher than the what? The blacks. And by this time, when it comes to housing, they have great houses. When it comes to wealth, my friend, they are so much great in terms of wealth. So this puts a people with the blacker color at a disadvantage, because this is called systematic racism. That systematically, the whites are above in education. The whites are above in wealth, and this makes the whites to be above the what? The blacks in where? In USA. Another one, civil rights movement and repressors. We believe by this time that there was a man called Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. came up with the civil rights movement, where he was calling for the rights of the blacks. We are honoring only one man in this room, Martin Luther King Jr. Because this man was promoting the rights of the what? Of the blacks. But the more he promoted the rights of the blacks, we believe by this time, this made the whites to hate the blacks the more. The whites had to hate the what? The blacks. So the civil rights movement was the origin of racial minority problems in USA, where when Martin Luther King Jr. promoted the rights of the blacks, this made the whites to hate the what? The blacks. And this was the origin of racial minority problems in where? In USA. Another one, Jim Crow laws and blacker codes. We believe by this time, these were laws that supported the white supremacy. This was an apartheid, where we believe that the Jim Crow laws and blacker codes promoted the whites against the blacks, promoted the whites against the what? The blacks. And this makes us believe that this was the origin of racial minority problems in where? in USA. Another one, we are saying modern day racial and minority concern, where we believe in terms of neighborhood, you find that the whites are living in a great neighborhood. The whites by this time, they have quality life. This affects childhood environment and employment adulthood. But in this case, we are realizing that the modern day racial and minority concerns, that in modern day life, you find that the whites are living in good neighborhood. And by this time, this affects child environment and employment in adulthood. Employment in what? Adulthood. And by this time, this is the origin of racial minority problems in where? In USA. That you find that the whites are living in great neighborhood. When you compare the whites and the what? And the black people. So we are saying